I get afraid when the youth are out there protesting, because you see how you had those renegades out there doing some violence. Those same renegades can take and fire on those officers, and you can see what happens.
Oh, there's no
from
question.
that.
I mean, we've seen it on camera with it. Well, some of the people are begging, don't deface, don't do this, don't, because it's going to be blamed on us. And so we have to be aware. And I think that you know, the FBI and other federal agencies have infiltrated, so they know what's going on. And what we need is leadership at all levels. I think we got good leadership here in Atlanta, but we have no leadership coming from the White House. And Mr. Trump, as you know, put a big tall fence up around the White House. And I understand he's been sleeping in a bunker, which means that he's the first magnitude of a coward. And so we need a change in our government. We need more humane people in office. We need less braggadocious people that somehow think that amassing wealth and et cetera somehow you know, it's something to make them happy, and yet there's so much poverty and so much desperation that is within our midst.
Now, in DC, the mayor just put out Black Lives Matter. Tell me, I understand they turned Black Lives Matter. But how the hell can all that matter? And you see all this homeless out here. You see these folks not making $15 an hour. What do they need to do? What are the demands?
Well, one of the things, Clyde, that we have to understand in this coronavirus season, we are what we call frontline people. And oftentimes they're thought about as police officers, firemen, and so forth. But now we understand that frontline workers are the people that work in our supermarket and attendants and stocking the shelves and manning the cash registers. They're the nurses' aides that's in the hospitals and the nursing home, the housekeepers that is on the front line, the bus drivers. They have to be paid a living wage. So the notion that $15 an hour will be that's not a livable wage. If you're a frontline worker, you need to be paid a wage that will give you dignity. And you know, so you know, Fred, you and I have been knowing one another a long time. $15 an hour is not even drinking money for me.
Thank you. That's 2 drinks at the restaurant.
So,
or going out to eat.
Yeah, so we need to recalibrate all of that. And now's the time. It's urgent.
It's almost like saying there has to be a think tank to put the issues together, because of them, the youth ain't taking it.
Well, there's no question. There's a new brand out here, and we, you know,
they need our help.
Well, they need our help, and because they're demanding that they not be treated with anything less than dignity of a human being, and I'm happy for that myself. I have, you know, children and grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren. And so it's great-great-grandchildren. So, you know, I have a vested interest that we live in a society and in a world that, you know, is more humane. And I think the other good thing, Clyde, is that, that this movement and the death of this young man has brought, it's global. This is going on all over the world. There's a call out now for justice and equity. And so we must seize the moment.
Well, look, I see this. You a deacon in the church. Correlate the similarity between Moses and Pharaoh. Let my people go. And the plague that we see in today.
Jesse Jackson, who was one of my mentors, as you know, I heard him once describe the difference between Billy Graham and Martin Luther King. He said that they were both at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning preach Jesus, right? And then after the preaching Jesus, Billy Graham would go to the golf course with Pharaoh for a round of golf, and Jesse would be saying, trying to get people to march toward freedom. And so I think this dichotomy with religion, Christianity more specifically, in the United States is something we need to re-examine. I responded to a comment made by a lieutenant governor from one of the states, I don't know what state it was, and he had opinioned that that Christianity would be the bridge, love would be the bridge. And I was saying one of the big problems, we have people in leadership like him that's ignorant, dumb, that Christianity as manifested by the European white man has been nothing but an instrument of death and destruction, and just the opposite of love. And right out of the Vatican itself, as you know,
Doctrine of Discovery.
Yeah, we talk about Doctrine of Discovery. And what did it do? And what did it say? It suggested that, that the Europeans need to grab the land, take possession of the land. And if the people weren't Christians, they were free to kill them.
Or if they didn't look like them, or speak their language.
Yes, and so we need to go back and revisit all of this. And, we just hired a new superintendent of schools here in Atlanta. And we tried to experiment integration. But this Atlanta Public Schools, as you probably know, is probably 97% African now, because the white people refuse to have their kids to be amongst us. They got them in private schools. And so that experiment hasn't worked. And we just brought in a new superintendent. And I'm suggesting we need a superintendent that is teaching, is guiding education for Atlanta to be Afrocentric rather than Eurocentric. And so rather than us teaching that the United States is a great melting pot, and that Columbus discovered America in 1492, and somehow we pit the native people, Americans, against the so-called pilgrims, the Europeans coming in, stealing, looting, and robbing, as they did, and putting the native people on reservation. It's time for us to have an accounting, and for us to come clean with our history. And then let's make adjustments. And if we're not willing to talk honestly and make adjustments, and I tremble to think about what's going to happen 10 years from now. But we have time now for us to make adjustments and to create this more perfect union.
Is that not one of the things that Asa Hilliard tried to do in the APS school system at one time? Are you familiar with that?
Well, I know Asa was a global man.
Like yourself.
That traveled throughout Africa and trying to unify, and then, unfortunately, caught malaria, and at the same time, I almost caught malaria. I was in the hospital out of my mind, but I recovered. Asa passed on, but I just think it's time now. I think we still have the time. Let's redeem the time by being honest and open, and then act on what we discover in our honest and open dialogue on the matter of race and some of the ramifications, and put things in a global perspective rather than trying to look at the world in terms of the United States, the Western world. That's pretty in a global context. That's why we're living in a global world, and if nothing else have taught us that, we're reminded now by the coronavirus that we're in one world.
Well, I'm gonna flip this script on a couple other things I wanted to ask you. Now, in terms of the television, looking at TV, I am seeing, and I'm not saying it ain't right, but I'm seeing so many black men with white women, so many gay folks. It's almost like saying the real black man don't exist. What is going on in your eyesight, or do you see it?
Well, you know, of course, I'm no respecter of persons in my philosophy, and but when you talk about, you know, like the homosexual piece, you talk about, it's always been with us, probably in the same proportion since the beginning of time. But everything is more open now and out in the public, and some of the things that, and it's kind of laughable to me that we there's so many versions of the Bible, as you know, and but African Americans, especially African American Baptist people, they have a preference for the King James version of the Bible, and while I think King James, you know, was a murderer, he was a treacherous human being, and he was a flaming homosexual, and so it seems very strange that if African Americans would knew the personality of King James, and he eventually got married, but if you go to Westminster Abbey, where he's buried, King James is buried between two of his male lovers, and his wife is buried over another spot there in Westminster Abbey. So the homosexual piece is something that has always been here, and I think that God, in His own infinite wisdom, don't make mistakes. And I think we have to become more tolerant in our
look at the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
All right. I guess in closing, what would you like to say?
Well, hang on in there. There's, you know, the end, and if you have the perseverance to say, I'm going to stay and see what the end is going to be, and a person like myself who now find themselves blessed enough to be 83 years old and still have the viability of my my body
And your mind.
and my mind, then I'm grateful. But let's and let's redeem the time. And when my wife died, like in 2008, and when we put her headstone up down there in Inman, Georgia, where I came from, I had to, because I wanted to make it convenient, I put my own headstone up there, and I put down, you know, my name is on it, Joe Beasley, born 1936, and then there's a dash. And so all they have to do now is to dig the hole, and then drop me in, and then they put the date on there. But I'm trying to redeem that dot.
Okay. Now, in redemption, if you were demise today, tomorrow, how would you want to be remembered? Who is Joe Beasley? Who is International Joe?
Well,
My friend.
I'm the son of a sharecropper, and that had no rights, and nobody had to respect, and that was put in my face a number of times as a young boy. And so, you know, whether I'm known globally or not, but I know where I came from. I'm a humble servant, and that's how I love to be remembered.
Anything else you'd like to say? It's always.
Yeah, thank you, Clyde, for this opportunity.
This means a lot to me.
Thank you.